They said it would never happen. Never in a million years, not after so many betrayals and so many false promises. That is precisely how some skeptics have reacted to the sudden news that the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, two nations entangled in decades of bitter hostility, have finally vowed to sign a comprehensive peace agreement. And guess what? It is scheduled to happen on the 27th day of June in Washington, forging a path that could at last end the chaos seething through Congo's turbulent eastern region. But what exactly is going on here, and how does this surprising pact connect to the labyrinth of tensions, warlords, and contradictory international interests in Central Africa? Today, we are going to dive deep into this remarkable development, unpack the reasons behind the conflict, and see if this deal stands a genuine shot at bringing peace, or if it is doomed to become yet another fleeting promise that unravels as quickly as it was forged. In this story, there is no shortage of twists and turns. We will examine how some people insist that real reforms are the only way to bring lasting stability, why the Congolese government may need to overhaul its entire security infrastructure, and how the international community's role might prove more pivotal than ever. We will also unveil the motivations of the M23 rebels, a group that marched straight into key cities in Eastern Congo, proclaiming they were defending ethnic Tutsis, yet widely accused of being little more than a proxy force for outside powers. Plus, we will peek into how everyday citizens, caught in a web of domestic politics and cross-border meddling, remain the most affected by a conflict that has stretched on for decades. Right from the start, we need to confront the dramatic accusations swirling around these two neighbors. Months ago, some might even say for years, the Congolese government slammed Rwanda with charges of actively supporting M23 rebels. Now, this is no small claim. Officials in Kinshasa maintain that the Rwandan military has backed, armed, and even quietly orchestrated rebel operations to control parts of the mineral-rich Eastern Congo. And it is more than just an idle rumor. Investigations by various United Nations experts suggest that up to 4,000 troops from Rwanda have been on the ground or intimately involved in supporting the rebellion, which Rwanda vehemently denies. If you find that revelation surprising or even downright shocking, this is a perfect moment to show some love. Give this story a like if it has grabbed your attention, and stay on board for the rest of this deep dive into a conflict that has rattled Central Africa for what feels like an eternity. Now, here is where matters become even more gripping. The M23 movement is comprised primarily of ethnic Tutsis who say they are defending Tutsi communities in Eastern Congo from discrimination or worse. Their official message is one of protecting minorities and upholding regional stability, especially for Congolese citizens of Rwandan heritage. However, critics counter that this is a convenient smokescreen for an armed movement whose real agenda is to secure valuable resources, curry favor with political elites in Kigali, and keep a strong foothold in a region awash with gold, coltan, and other precious minerals. At the center of this conflict is a region so rich in natural resources some describe it as a geological scandal. Throughout the vastness of Eastern Congo, deposits of critical minerals draw not only local warlords, but also unscrupulous business interests from around the planet. Some suspect that beyond nationality, beyond old tribal allegiances, the controlling of resources is the real currency of this violence. In the swirl of rumors and half-truths that has fueled tensions for years, few points remain as consistent as the notion that money, or specifically the mineral wealth, influences the formation and destruction of alliances in the blink of an eye. But the conflict is not just about those high-stakes minerals, it is also about the complicated story of displacement, identity, and survival. Consider that the M23 fighters advanced with startling speed and seized the strategic city of Goma in January, sending shockwaves across the region. This was followed by the capture of Bukavu in February, an alarming expansion that threatened to destabilize Congo's entire eastern flank. In the aftermath, thousands of frightened civilians fled their homes, and families were separated under extremely harsh conditions. International relief organizations scrambled to consolidate resources and deliver vital support to an ever-growing number of internally displaced people. Indeed, among the greatest tragedies of this conflict is the toll on those who live between rebel-held enclaves and heavily guarded Congolese army checkpoints. Now, let us talk about the deal itself. According to officials, the draft peace agreement aims to include critical provisions for the non-negotiable respect of each nation's territorial integrity, essentially a vow not to violate national boundaries or sponsor incitements of violence across them. Further, it calls for an absolute prohibition of hostilities and a plan for disengagement. That means ordering armed rebels to stop fighting, withdraw from captured positions, and in certain cases, disarm entirely. Even more intriguing, there is the concept of conditional integration. In other words, some non-state armed groups could find a pathway to become part of the Congolese national forces, contingent on them laying down weapons for good, renouncing violence, and agreeing to abide by international standards. If this sounds familiar, you are right. For many years, countless pacts, talks, and deals have tried to demobilize rebel groups in Eastern Congo and incorporate them into the official structure. The difference this time, at least as the signatories promise, is that they are determined to enforce every last clause with unwavering resolve. Still, cynics point out that we have heard similar rhetoric before. Peace agreements have come and gone, overshadowed by the harsh reality of overlapping interests and the seemingly endless quest to control resources. Will this time prove any different? For some, the agreement is all about optics. After all, Congo and Rwanda are technically not at war, despite frequent skirmishes, border tensions, and cross-accusations about support for insurgencies. By agreeing to appear at the negotiation table in Washington, both nations can trumpet a narrative that they are fully committed to peace and stability. Yet watchers of the region cannot help but wonder if the two presidents, Felix Tshisekedi of Congo and Paul Kagame of Rwanda, are sincere in their engagement or merely appeasing foreign allies. Rwanda's longtime President Kagame, in particular, features prominently in debates over the root causes of conflict in Eastern Congo, with detractors alleging that he manipulates events to boost Kigali's national interests. The Congolese leadership, on the other hand, is criticized by some domestic analysts for lacking the political will or the logistical capacity to address the fundamental issues fueling rebel recruitment. Critics say the Congolese government has never thoroughly reformed its armed forces, leaving the eastern provinces vulnerable to infiltration and crackdowns by local warlords. Reportedly, undue political influence, poor training, and corruption hamper the Congolese National Army. From that vantage point, each time a rebel faction crumbles, another quickly arises to fill the void, whether spurred by ethnic grievances or the simple allure of exploiting resources for profit. Among those expressing caution is Corneille Nangaa, who leads the Congo River Alliance, a coalition of smaller rebel groups. Earlier this year, he insisted that global sanctions or proposed deals would not quell the fighting, so long as Congolese leaders and international actors fail to tackle the deeper injustices smoldering under the surface. Then there is Christian Malika, a respected political scientist at the Congolese think tank Dipole. He believes the longevity of the upcoming agreement largely depends on Kinshasa's readiness to perform sweeping changes within its security apparatus, including training, accountability, consistent funding, and the professionalization of its units. For Maleka, the real question is, does the government have the political backbone to see such reforms through to the end? Time and time again, we have seen external mediators or powerful nations try to facilitate dialogues. In the past, talks in Qatar showed glimmers of promise, but eventually fizzled out. Observers mention that foreign sponsors sometimes lose patience, while local leaders or rebel groups waver if the funding does not arrive, or if new opportunities arise elsewhere. And so, the cycle of sporadic peace, renewed conflict, and massive displacement continues, leaving ordinary citizens disillusioned. For many, the phrase peace talks has become a hollow expression, conjuring images of swift handshakes followed by intangible change on the ground. Nonetheless, the upcoming signing in Washington signals a new wave of interest from the international community, especially the United States, in stabilizing this pivotal region. Diplomats from the U.S. State Department have expressed optimism that bridging the gap between Kinshasa and Kigali is essential. With these two leaders at odds, smaller militias exploit the security vacuum, perpetuating a humanitarian disaster. One can only imagine the thousands of families that might finally find respite if the guns fall silent and the roads become safe for trade, travel, and everyday life. In exploring the potential pitfalls, we must remember that one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this conflict is the intricate tapestry of ethnic divisions. Congo's east is home to a variety of communities harboring differing perspectives on who truly belongs. The M23 rebels, made up mainly of ethnic Tutsis, repeatedly claim that they are standing up for vulnerable Tutsis in Congo, who they insist are marginalized or targeted by other militias. But critics say that this justification is more about controlling strategic land routes and resource hubs than it is about protecting anyone from discrimination. Some Congolese nationalists resent the notion that an armed group can claim to speak for entire communities on the basis of ethnicity. Equally, Tutsis in the region resent being labeled as foreigners or traitors. This deeply rooted tension can be traced to the broader Great Lakes region, specifically Rwanda's history of genocide in the mid-90s. For some, the trauma surrounding that era remains raw, creating emotional fault lines that opportunistic warlords and politicians exploit for their own ends. Against that backdrop, the idea that a single, comprehensive peace treaty could soothe all these wounds might seem far-fetched. And yet, there is real hope swirling around the ceremony in Washington. After so many attempts that faltered, perhaps this new agreement, backed by renewed U.S. and international impetus, will coalesce stable alliances that last. Maybe it will provide the impetus for real reforms in the Congolese National Army. Maybe it will deter the infiltration of foreign military support by shining a bright, spotlight-like scrutiny on any sign of meddling. Here is the question that keeps returning. What if this is just symbolism? A ceremony in Washington, cameras flashing, leaders pledging their resolute commitment, and then, a few months later, the eastern frontier ignites once again wherever gold or tantalum can be mined. Will the local warlords really give up their lucrative fiefdoms so easily? Will the M23, along with the roughly 100 armed factions that roam this territory, truly lay down their weapons? To answer that, one must consider the complexities of each side's incentives. From Rwanda's perspective, ensuring that the border area remains stable, or at least not controlled by hostile forces, has historically been a top priority. For Congo, stamping out all these militias is crucial to reasserting national sovereignty and fostering any chance of sustainable development. Both countries stand to gain from improved trade and cooperation, especially in a region known for artisanal mining, where conflict often disrupts formal supply chains. If powerful foreign buyers see an opportunity for stable resource extraction under a legitimate government, then an influx of investment might follow, which in turn could generate revenue for both nations. Yet, the known stumbling block also persists: the entanglement of money and politics in Congo's stuttering governance system. Even well-intentioned reforms can be bogged down by nepotism, bribery, intimidation, and a lack of coherent leadership. Veteran observers say that the biggest threat to implementing a peace deal is the potential mismatch between ambitious legal frameworks drafted in posh conference halls and the messy ground reality. Rebels in remote outposts are unlikely to lay down arms unless they see tangible benefits or are forced to do so through sustained military pressure. Communities historically traumatized by violence might also be slow to accept any arrangement that reintegrates their former tormentors into the national army. The question becomes one of trust, or the near total absence of it, in a region battered by false dawns. That is precisely why hearing from experts like Christian Moleka of Dipole underscores the challenge. He believes that although the New Deal might seem impressive on paper, it will prove worthless if Kinshasa fails to unravel the reckless systems that have allowed warlords to operate so freely. He wonders aloud whether the Congolese government is prepared to implement structural changes in the chain of command, arms management, and soldier pay, so that desertions and corruption become less prevalent. Reforms of that scale typically take years, strong political resolve, and unwavering support from external donors. Will the international community remain steadfast long after the cameras in Washington have been turned off? Then there is the rebellious twist. Some smaller factions, like the Congo River Alliance, have claimed no interest in backing down, especially if they perceive the peace accord to be secretly designed to favor bigger players at their expense. Corneille Nangaa, the alliance's leader, has shown scant optimism for what he sees as an arrangement hammered out by bigger and more influential forces. If such smaller rebels remain armed, the region could still be vulnerable to sporadic outbreaks of violence, undermining the whole effort. All these concerns illustrate just how complicated forging real, lasting peace in Eastern Congo can be. Still, for thousands of civilians uprooted by conflict, the possibility that this might be the deal to finally hold is tantalizing. Imagine entire families reuniting without fear of gunfire, local markets bustling without the shadow of abductions, rural schools staying open because teachers do not flee armed invasions. That is what is truly at stake, a chance for normalcy in a land that has known heartbreak for too many years. Of course, this is where you come in. If you believe the complexities we are unraveling deserve more attention, consider subscribing to this channel. That way, you will not miss future deep dives or updates about ongoing conflicts around the world. So, where do we stand right now as the clock ticks toward the 27th of June gathering? The official language from both governments, as well as the U.S. State Department, exudes confidence. They have publicly reiterated that the new peace agreement includes ironclad assurances of respect for sovereignty. Both nations vow to restrain any whisper of cross-border support for armed militias. They promise a path for the demobilization of rebel fighters and even potential reintegration into Congolese forces. Of course, only under specific conditions. Diplomatic sources, commanding top-level logic, say it is the best chance for ending the protracted conflict that has ravaged Eastern Congo for decades. But outside diplomatic circles, Congolese families remain watchful. Too many times, hope has been dangled in front of them, only to melt away. They have endured the heartbreak of seeing national unity pacts that collapsed. They have listened to optimistic speeches by politicians who, in the end, delivered only more insecurity. When the M23 rebels seized Goma, it was not the first time a rebel group had strolled into a major city, just as it was not the first time civilians had scrambled to save their lives and livelihoods. So, the real measure of success for these upcoming accords will be how well reality on the ground changes. Key roads, once threatened by armed gangs, need to be patrolled and secure. United Nations missions and humanitarian agencies must see far fewer reports of ambushes or kidnappings. Ordinary folk must be able to walk to their farms without fear that some militia will snatch them for ransom or forcibly recruit them. That is what a genuine peace process looks like when it begins working. And if that is what emerges in Congo's eastern provinces, even the staunchest cynics might concede that hope can blossom in the midst of unimaginable hardship. Look closely, and you will find that this conflict holds universal resonance for how people endure war. The swirl of local grievances meeting foreign intervention is not unique to Central Africa. It speaks to a global struggle over identity, resources, and political power. Where some see a purely African affair, others see a microcosm of how international players maneuver behind the scenes, pushing or curtailing local conflicts based on broader strategic interests. That is why this new agreement, if it endures, could set a vital precedent for similar crises around the world. Nevertheless, the greatest tests are yet to come. Implementation can prove to be the Achilles' heel of any peace framework. Will Rwanda wholly comply by restricting any flow of weapons across the border to M23 or other armed factions sympathetic to Kigali? Will Congolese officials stand firm in disarming local militias that, in the past, have done the government's dirty work when it suited them? Will the Congolese National Army, once rebellious fighters are integrated, trust these new recruits from M23, or will the same cycles of suspicion reappear? Optimists point out that the mere fact these two adversaries have once again pledged to sit down together with the backing of major global players indicates the depth of concern over what might happen if the conflict spirals out of control. If the fighting escalates, it could trigger a wave of humanitarian and security crises that ripple well beyond the immediate border region, possibly affecting neighboring countries. That, in turn, might lead to more pressure from international allies to take any path, negotiated or otherwise, that ensures calm. Pessimists retort that we have been here before. The signatories discuss grand plans, but within a few months, the old tensions burst forth. After the M23 advanced and seized territory with such ease, some wonder if public commitments to peace can realistically restrain the group's ambitions. They are well organized, with loyal backers, and do not necessarily fear condemnation by the international community if they believe external support will continue to flow. In a final analysis, no single dimension can fully explain what is happening in Eastern Congo. The mix of ethnic distrust, historical trauma, the lure of profit from natural resources, and the strategic interests of regional and global powers conspire to perpetuate a conflict that has seen countless treaties come and go. At the same time, the unwavering hope of those who live there is equally striking. Faith in the possibility of normal life, even after decades of war, survives. It is no small thing that so many people hope this peace agreement in Washington could be that turning point. Not merely a show for the cameras, but a real course correction that might put an end to the cycle of bloodshed once and for all. So, as we await the big date, pay attention to what each side does in these crucial days. Are there concrete steps to scale back violence? Are soldiers being recalled from the front lines? Do the signatories publish transparent plans for how armed fighters will be integrated, or how local communities can be protected from retribution once rebels withdraw? If we do not see real progress on the ground, this much publicized deal may become just another footnote in a long, bitter history of thwarted peace. Nevertheless, to close on a note of cautious optimism, there is a sense of heightened scrutiny this time around. Civil society leaders, local activists, and international observers appear determined to hold politicians accountable. It is that spirit of vigilance that could make all the difference. If the region can break its cyclical pattern of war, disarm the entrenched militias, and undertake the reforms that analysts like Maleka describe, then perhaps Eastern Congo can, at last, take steps toward a future unclouded by artillery blasts and rebel checkpoints. That could mean a historically significant shift, not only for the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, but also for the entire Great Lakes region. Whether you believe this will be the dawn of true peace or yet another disappointment, the stakes could not be higher for millions of people whose daily routines have been defined by fear. Agreements are one thing, real change is another. But we can watch, document, and, in our own ways, encourage the forces that push toward a genuine resolution. After all, with so much conflict in the world, every sign of diplomacy is worth championing, if it is backed by lasting resolve. Thank you for staying with us through these crucial reflections. Keep your eyes on these developments, listen for updates, and do not be afraid to share your thoughts. Until next time, stay informed, stay hopeful, and remember that even in regions fraught with despair, peace might yet find a foothold.